Thank you, Rachel. And thank y'all for having this event over in the Arkansas Delta in Forrest City. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about my background. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, so it's good to see everyone, and look forward to catching up with you on your projects. But so I am Martin Smith. I am fifth generation Arkansas Delta. I tell folks I spent 20 years of my life trying to find a way to get out of this place, and then 10 to find a way to get back. And it's very true. You don't really appreciate the culture and what this place has until you leave, and the natural resources as well. And so what I'm going to talk about today is going to be a little bit of a spin, a switch up on what y'all been hearing for this morning. So you're going to see what's been in my mind for really my life, and I'm going to have your mind spinning as you leave here with the potential of this place. So a lot of the historic preservation aspect of what you've seen, those are the nuts and the bolts, and I'm going to show you more of a vision for this place. And that if you get anything from it, it's hopefully you're invigorated to continue to fight for the existing infrastructure that is out there that is crumbling and leaving. When I came back I live in a little place called Bird, Arkansas. The reason I am back here is because I saved a home that was going to be torn down. That was built in 1900 by my great-grandfather. And my wife and I were in Austin, Texas, and we decided to move back to the Arkansas Delta and save that house. And we didn't have any kids then. We have 3 kids now, and they're growing up and as a 6th generation in that place. So my ancestors came over here in 1850, following the Land Swamp Act of 1850, which is basically the federal government provided incentive to come and drain these swamplands and create agriculture to feed the world. So the federal government paid my ancestors to do that, and 175 years later, they're paying me as a landscape architect to put the wetlands back. So it's full circle, and it's fitting, right? But what I love about this place so much is the cultural history. And I spent time in Fort Collins, Colorado before it became just an ever popular place. Young people flocked there. I spent time in Austin, Texas. I left in 1998, came back to Little Rock. And I always felt like Arkansas was, maybe about 15 to 25 years behind those places. And it's very true. I saw Little Rock grow from the early 2000s and had a really good movement. It's kind of stagnant right now. I think it's a city that could really do wonderful things with outdoor recreation and so forth. We moved to Bird Eye in 2007. So I've been back here for 14 years. And we have, as I said, I'm a landscape architect, we have civil engineers. I'm here in Wynn. We have an office in Little Rock that started in 2001. And our largest office is in Northwest Arkansas, obviously, with all the growth that's going on up there. There's a total of 18 of us now, and we're all in the state of Arkansas. Most of us grew up in Arkansas, left, and came back. So that's what's really, really neat about our team. So today, revitalization of the Arkansas Delta through outdoor recreation, cultural tourism. It seems like it may take a spin away from what we're talking about, but I think that you'll see a lot of the different elements that were in place. So I'm going to talk about really the timeline. Ecological Design Group was founded in 2008, and in 2015 we created a plan called the Big Woods Plan, and this was a group from Clarendon wanting to save the 2-mile elevated historic concrete, what would you call that? I guess a bridge. The approach through the Big Woods. And so we created this plan. I'm going to talk about that plan briefly. I distilled it down because I want to touch on this evolution of where we've gone from there. That plan really was touching to me and allowed me to open my eyes to the Arkansas Delta and the potential impact that we could have for this place, and that there is a potential for revitalization of looking at this place in a different way than we have in the past. So from 2015 to 21, I went to conferences like this. I talked about the Big Woods plan, hoping that somebody, people would, groups would adopt it, take it on, and implement it. But let me tell you something, it's a big vision. And big visions are hard to implement when you don't know operationally how to do that. I figured that out probably about the time the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, that was an interesting time because it elevated, it accelerated. I felt like I was always 10 years ahead of what was coming. All of a sudden, we merged, and outdoor recreation started to be thought of in a different way. So I'm going to go through some projects that we did that were tied to Big Woods. But in 2001, our firm, Ecological Design Group, we created a nonprofit called Studio Drift. And Drift, my son's an organic farmer. It's a bad 5-letter word for him. But what it stands for is developing rural infrastructure for tomorrow. And I thought it was fitting for the Arkansas Delta with our agricultural history. So created this 5-year plan to be initiated, and we're looking at the first phase of it to be complete in 2025. We're going to go through the initiation of infrastructure improvements and then planned completion of infrastructure for 2025. So just quickly, and as I said, I distilled it down. Anybody that knows me and the work that we do, first project I ever did was Heifer International World Headquarters. Windrock International World Headquarters was another one, Hillary Clinton Children's Library in Little Rock. In this area, the Arkansas State Veterans Cemetery in Bird Eye. And then if you're familiar with Northwest Arkansas, Lake Atalanta in Rogers, Osage Park in Bentonville, Kohler, mountain bike trail system in Bentonville, the 8th Street Market. There's a whole slew of projects up there, and we're doing some really exciting ones too. But I base everything on watersheds and ecoregions. If I had my way, I would not have county lines, state boundaries, and so forth. I would have the country divided into watersheds and ecoregions. Ecoregions, if you follow the ecoregions of Arkansas, there's 8, it could go either way. They carry this different cultural aspect as well. You know when you enter the Arkansas Delta, that Mississippi alluvial floodplain, it's a different culture. So when I talk about that now, people want authentic cultural experiences as tourism. So it starts to hit me. It's like, well, things haven't changed here, but that's for the better for us because everybody wants this now. We just need to find a way to get them here and help them navigate this place. So the Big Woods piece, and the vision is going to be bigger than what I'm showing you, but this is what we were initially contracted to do, is just look at the Big Woods and find a way to save that bridge, okay? Let me make the point real clear. It wasn't a plan to find a way to save that bridge. I went into the Big Woods for like 3 days. I came out with a different idea. I said, look, this is bigger than just saving this bridge. And I knew there was a good chance that the bridge may not be able to be saved anyway, but it opened my eyes to something that this is bigger than just saving this bridge. So let's go ahead and do this plan, and let's open it up a little bit. So, and it came from a family and I were we went and did the Cinque Terre, the five lands, these beautifully culturally little places along the Italian coastline. But if you're there, if you're a local in that village, you would be excited to come to the Arkansas Delta. Because when you grow up someplace, you never leave, you take the place for granted. And so I started thinking the same thing for the Arkansas Delta. We take this place for granted. This place is amazing. I mean, the Big Woods and some of these places I've been, you'd have to travel to South America to find things like this. And we have it right here underneath right here. It's all accessible to us. So those 5 rivers all came through. So I started looking at the 5 lands of Cinque Terre. Well, what? In the Arkansas Delta, let's look at these 5 port towns. I experienced these 5 port towns not from the conventional highways and roads that you come into them, because when you do that, you get to the John Deere, you get to the hospitals, the tobacco shops, the liquor store. Then you get to these quaint little towns that nobody's paying attention to, and their buildings are crumbling or falling down. So we get on a boat. We experience the opposite way, which is way they were built to be experienced along the White River. You see the courthouse, in Clarendon. You come around the bend, and all you see is the architectural element of the courthouse, and the port is usually within 250 feet from downtown, Main Street, all of them. Put your boat, you walk out, and you're in town, and you miss all of those other things. So it flipped my mind. I was like, we need to be looking at this place in a different means. So we created the 5 ports with the bookends, Newport and Clarendon. Of course, Newport Bridge was going to be a bookend, and the Clarendon Bridge is going to be a bookend, and we're going to put these and turn the White River into ecological tourism. It won't ever move grain again because of the cost to dredge that river. It's not going to happen. But it's a beautiful river, and you can move up and down, and there's incredible places. So then you had Augusta, Des Arc, Devils Bluff, Clarendon. There's more towns that we could do, but it made sense because I like the 5. And then you look at the routes. Well, the other side of it, the market. So that's our port towns. The market towns would be Crowley's Ridge. I mean, how unique is it to have a White River and then Crowley's Ridge, which is this geological formation in the middle of, I think of my ancestors coming from Alabama. They got across the Mississippi River, and you go through those wildlands. You get to a ridge that climbs 350 feet out of the ground. I was like, I'd stop too. I mean, I'm going to settle right here. I mean, who wants to go back into that? So, and they did. But that ridge is unbelievable. We all take it for granted. You can see it right over there. I'm going to show you some pictures and a little bit of a bike ride that we did down through it. But the same thing, we took 5 towns: Harrisburg, Wynn, Forrest City, Marietta, and Helena. So 5 ports, 5 towns. And then how do we want to connect these? Forget about the highways. We want to connect them through routes, cycling routes. RDOT already has cycling routes, and that's what we designed this plan around. But since then, we've seen the evolution of gravel bike riding just skyrocket. So I started getting on my bike and riding all these farm roads, these gravel roads, these old military road, for the Civil War where they came down, or the traders in the early 1800s that came down Crowley's Ridge because it was the only dry land to get to Wicksburg and trade with the ships that came up the Mississippi River. Those paths and lanes are still there. It's amazing. It's beautiful. I grew up here, and I had no idea of some of the places that we found. And I'm going to speed up just a little bit because I don't want to go over my time, but here's kind of a breakdown of the White River and those port towns. And, this is down at the bottom, that's Des Arc. We've got Augusta in there, I think that's Devils Bluff. They all look the same, they all have the same character of the buildings. But what I noticed when I was doing it, this was, I guess, 6 years ago, is that we don't have a lot of time left. If we lose these buildings, even though a lot of the local people think of them as we need to move on from this, I saw it as like, no, you need to save this. This is what is going to bring the generation that didn't grow up with it back to see it. The integrity, the culture, and the culture of the place, along with the historic integrity of these structures, is what makes it. So if we lose that, we were losing everything that I'm talking about. Saving. This is just some of the cycling routes. The Big River Bridge is a huge asset. I was over there visiting with Dow McBean just a couple days ago. And he had stats. They have counters on that. There's 1 million people crossing that bridge a year. 1 million people. 700,000 coming from Tennessee. I was surprised there's 300,000 going from Arkansas into Tennessee, into Memphis. But when you cross that urban, the Memphis, the population basis, we have 1 million people coming across. But they come across and there's nowhere to go. We're going to give them someplace to go. Crowley's Ridge is 50 miles from that place. Gravel roads are there, state parks are there, and so forth. So these are some of the things we started trying to put together. These are the market towns coming down Crowley's Ridge. Anybody that knows me, my big vision for Crowley's Ridge, it should be the Sonoma or Napa Valley to Arkansas. What it is to California, it should be the same for Arkansas, but not wines, specialty foods, heritage grains, things that have a very high yield of sellability. Break the mold from the big ag's always going to be here. The reason Crowley's Ridge is there because you can't farm it. So it's an asset that got saved. But we can use it. We only need small farms, 1 acre to 10 acres, and have all these different specialty type things. So take Crowley's Ridge Scenic Byway, which is an asset that's in place, and there should be tourism traveling it, but you should be able to stop at small farms and pick up different things. We should have more markets as well. So this is the whole plan put together. You see the White River, the Crowley's Ridge with the markets, the ports, and I didn't mention the fish markets go along with the river, and the interconnectivity of the economic sustainability of a region. I always talk about the Arkansas Delta is one place that you could build a wall around and we could exist. We have fresh water, we have land to grow food, we have beautiful natural resources. Not that we want to do that, but it's very important to think that we can exist on our own. But how do we exist? We exist by farming, sending off, processed, and coming back. And a lot of that food's going to food banks and feeding, our people throughout these counties. So these are just some illustrations of what kind of like a pour. This was Clarendon. That building is gone now, but that port is literally 150 feet from that location. Should be markets.
The bridge is gone too.
The bridge,
Is that the bridge?
that's the bridge, but yes, that's the bridge. Is that bridge gone too? Or they kept it across the river? I haven't been down there, honestly.
They kept the railroad bridge, didn't they?
They kept the railroad bridge and it stops, but on this little point,
The driving bridge.
the little point, yeah. Well, the railroad bridge, I thought they were going to keep this, but I haven't been down there. And then the concrete piece that goes through the woodland is what they were going to, yeah.
So is that red brick building gone now?
That red brick building's gone, yep. That was the Bondi building. So this was the concrete bridge. We envisioned it to bring in, because it's 100 miles from Little Rock, 100 miles from Memphis, being a bike in, float in, only type of a place to come and be able to stay in the treetops of the big woods. Instead, I think we spend $3, $4, $5 million to take it down, or more, yeah, maybe more. And then and we're still working on some of this with the Nature Conservancy, but potential on BioWU to put in these. Those are high because that's how high the floodplain is when you're in that area. But be able to bring people into those areas. So that's the big woods. And that's the basis of a vision. But the vision has gotten bigger than that since then. And it's expanded and it's become a reality. As I told you before, that we decided in 2020 to adopt it ourselves and use it as a mission for us to move forward. Because I'm going to go through some projects that we use. Since I'm from Wynn, we kind of played with some of the ideas because we needed to preserve the infrastructure and increase the amenities in the downtowns. So we use this as a template to create kind of a proof of concept that this can be done, it can be successful. And Mr. McGuire and Judy are here. They're parts of some of this Wynn downtown I hope I got everybody here. City of Wynn, RDOT TAPS grant, had funding, Arkansas State Parks, outdoor recreation grant, Wynn downtown revitalization, USDA on some farmers market stuff, and Judy and Sam had the donated land along with money for some of the projects you're going to see. So one is, this is a Crowley's Ridge Scenic Byway. And not only, this is all, we needed to create a gateway. Everybody just goes Highway 1 and passes. So this was now a gateway that you can see from Highway 1 that pulls you in and created what we're calling a historic district. Rachel, you may have done the commercial historic district, right?
I did the industrial district.
Industrial district.
But I've done a walking tour of the commercial district.
Walking tour of the commercial, okay. So, and it starts really right where this is. And this is not only just dressing up a downtown, this actually mitigates stormwater. We put all these stormwater planners, because this is all in a floodplain, and everybody in Wynn that says you can't do anything in downtown Wynn, it's because it's in a floodplain, but, you know, I mean, but we got money to do these street improvements, and it collects stormwater. We turn parking into porous parking, and it's like a giant sponge. You'd never know it, really, if you went down there, but by doing some different things. Now, this is not historic street of Wynn, but it's something that attracts younger people to come back to a community, because you start to provide the amenities, and we are keeping the historic infrastructure. This is my building. My office is right there. That's the Wynn Bank, 1910, I think. And we turned from this point on down, we turned it to one way so we could get more diagonal parking in. And then on the other side here is porous paving, and it's parallel. And, you know, for small towns, you do things like that, you get there's a lot of chatter. Please ask questions if you go there.
Have you documented the economic impact of these changes in any way?
There's more, I get more phone calls of people wanting to buy our buildings. Sam, you probably do too. There's more there's more space, utilized space downtown. But no, that's something economic development should be doing, right? But economic development doesn't think that this makes an impact. I mean, so let's not get off.
You're right. Some of the buildings down there, if you look at that brick building with 3 windows just across from there, like that stood empty for years. There's a new office going in there right now. 2 doors down from there, it had been practically abandoned.
This is open, yeah.
It's actually abandoned now, then it's a beauty parlor and a photography studio. And then the last building down, the Friends of the Light, we don't speak about it.
So the public library and
learning center. So yes, very definitely. You know, it's hard to say, well, this came and that came in. You know, it's been a continuous process. But yes, we're definitely seeing revitalization of the downtown.
And we know in small towns it's slow to get there. It was a load. Yes, it is. It has been a catalyst. And here's the other thing: it sets Wynn into a position to where these buildings are readily move-inable and provide these amenities that bring younger families back that they want. So I would say for sure. And then these are the porous pavers, the gray pavers there. So that's all collecting stormwater, and there's a pipe underneath it. These are buildings that Sam and Judy donate that lot. So there's a splash pad here, water comes up, display, and these are where little market pavilions where people can set up and a stage for music or movies or whatever. And you can see where we took the road down to one way.
It reminds me of North Little Rock. Have you been down there, Martin and Argenta?
Yes.
To the Rachel can speak there, but it's really cool. They have a pavilion really similar to that. They have a little splash pad. They have like a stage. It's very drawing. It makes you want to go down there.
And that's, you know, after, we need to be doing this before, but after the pandemic, it accelerated it. It's, you know, as a designer of public space, you don't want to over-design anymore. You just want to create a flexible space that can be modified easily and adapted over time. And I think, you know, and even in architecture, I'd say it's the same thing. You want your buildings, we're getting much more simpler on our finishes and creating a building that could change uses very easily instead of designed just for a use. So, and that's something that we're trying to do in public space. So this is to show you, to show that it's not, these landscapes aren't just for, I've always had a concept, you should never put a landscape in just for aesthetic appeal. They should be actually working and doing some job. Otherwise, you're just constantly throwing your money away trying to maintain it. And that's all the way down the stormwater aspects. And we have, I had so many questions, you got to put an irrigation system in, how you going to maintain it? We don't have any irrigation. We put plants native to Crowley's Ridge that grow there anyway. All you have to do is get them established. First year, we had the fire department come down and spray it. They loved coming down there once a week when would be 115 degrees, and they just give everything a little drink. But we don't have to do anything anymore. Everything's established. So, and I want to throw this in because for downtown revitalization, I was on that in that group for a while, and my big push was, look, y'all need to become a real estate company for downtown. You're a nonprofit. Get these people that have vacated these buildings to deed them over to you, and then go through the historic preservation, write grants, get the roofs structurally sound, get the facades, put back, but keep them shelled out so that they're ready when a developer comes. They're available. They don't have to go through all that, the hundreds of $1,000s to just try to get them stabilized. So they said, no, that's not what we do. I said, well, okay, so my wife and I, we did it. And I know Judy and Sam have done it for years. They own a lot of the buildings downtown. We bought 3 of the buildings, but 11,500 square feet for $2.50 a square foot. I mean, were they in good shape? No. But we put $150,000 in to get them to that position to where a developer could come in and do something. But this is actually on a contributing structure in the commercial historic district. And this is what it looked like before. We started ripping all that stuff down, and all of a sudden, all these storefronts, they come, it's like a Sears catalog. I mean, they come with the steel posts, all this, the roofing, everything. It's just it's a kit. And of course, they're back there, right? They uncovered them. They're like, Martin, you can come down and see what of course they're back there. And so then it got me thinking, well, I'm going to go down to the Cross County Historical Society and see if I can find an old photograph of this place. I wouldn't have ever figured out that that's the building until we found these columns right here, because then they're right there they are. So now I've got a facade, the storefront. And I did the history. This is a marketplace. There's a stack of apples in the window, and these are the Bertini brothers from Chicago, the early 1900s. Barber shop, you can see there's somebody cutting somebody's hair right up there. And so I got a local carpenter to rebuild the storefront. We kept the brick right there just because, and we got it back to pretty close to the way it was. And then the building next to it, this building was a non-contributing building. I didn't have a before picture, but it was worse. It had shake, no windows, just shake, and plywood and shake. You guys remember that. And so we've taken it down. Luckily, local carpenter rebuilt the windows were completely gone, but we had enough of them to where we could see how they were constructed. And so we got the wood and he built the storefront. These are just shelled out. My wife and I have plans to do something with them when we have time, but it's not right now when you're raising 3 kids. So that's what we did is kind of a proof of concept on a downtown. And yes,
What did you do if you had, were property owners, because downtown Wynn does look a lot different, just in a few years, it's amazing how much better it looks. But were there some property owners who just, we're not gonna sell anything, we're just gonna let this building fall in? Or did everybody pretty much?
oh, the buildings we were, well, my brother's an attorney there, and it's always a lot easier to let somebody else work the deal, you know? And I didn't have any issues. I didn't. I mean, a little bit, but it wasn't bad. I know that that's a nightmare in a lot of like communities. You know, cotton plant. Like, I think the owners are all live away from there, but they won't sell anything and they just let it fall down.
And we've got one person that owns like 10 buildings, and you won't sell them, he won't do anything to them, and basically, they've been trying to do something, but nope. And when they do bring an attorney, he brings an attorney and fights against it.
Yeah.
And so, like, real eccentric, he will not, and so that's why I was wondering, is there any kind of way to
Well,
get around things like that?
That was my first inclination to do was for downtown revitalization as a nonprofit to go approach, you know, and have the buildings deeded, because I was worried about that. But I didn't have that issue. It wasn't bad. And even in Duval's Bluff, I'm going to show you next, was even better. I mean, it just became like good friends with the owner and just believes in what we're doing. And not only did he quitclaim deed them over to us, we're down at the courthouse getting the quitclaim deed finalized, and the county clerk said, Mr. Smith, it's $25. And I was like, I looked at Glenn, I said, Glenn, you got $25? So he even paid to have him quitclaim deeded over to me. But that's been and I'm going to talk about Duval's Bluff a little bit next. And but we're at 2021, and it's like we decided that we've got to move. I mean, I could do this stuff. I mean, I could spend the next 15 years doing stuff like that, and I'm not going to make a difference overall. So we decided to start the nonprofit to be able to open ourselves up for funding and create an organized, 5-year, now it's 4-year plan, and go out and look for the funding and put it in place. I've got 2 people, 2 employees on Studio Drift, and so it is an arm of EDG in the sense of the fact that we're able to use our staff to do these master plans and accelerate and quickly turn things around. So we have a broader depth, even though we just have 2 employees in the nonprofit, we're able to utilize the skill set that our office has. And so the evolution of Studio Drift, and I said developing rural infrastructure for tomorrow. I'm just going to read this, so because I don't know it by heart, but the mission of Studio Drift is to create connections in the culturally and ecologically rich but economically poor regions of Arkansas. The overall vision includes engaging in a community-first approach while preserving the authentic cultural, historic, and ecological integrity of the region. The vision involves investing in existing adventure tourism infrastructure and creating compatible placemaking strategies that prepare communities for tomorrow. We envision rural Arkansas communities and economies that are reanimated through creative activation of natural, cultural, and historic assets that attract tourists looking for unique and authentic experiences. So that's a lot of words, but it's basically saying that we want to identify the existing infrastructure and just save it as is and activate it, preserve it and activate it. And we don't want to own this. We don't want to have a lot of employees. We want the local people to be our workforce and train them and build that from that standpoint.
Can I ask you?
Yes,
How many volunteers do you have?
volunteered by my staff of 18 people in the office. No, it's amazing. Of course, until we really get someone situated, and I'm a true believer of, I've seen a lot of a lot of solutions for the Arkansas Delta, but it's usually big organizations with a lot of cash that are sitting on the sidelines, and they're all excited they're going to save this place. Well, we all know that's failed for years. I mean, it's continuing to happen. When I came back and moved here, I understood why. I mean, this place is not going to get better that way. It's got to grow from within, and it's got to be much more grassroots and gritty instead of a lot of money. People that live here that have been here and they've stayed here just don't like change. And when someone comes in and tells them they're doing something wrong, it's perceived as a threat. And quite honestly, even me, with my family history, I'm perceived as a threat in a lot of places. So I have to learn how to navigate and move. I've probably spent more time figuring out how to navigate around. The best thing to do is just don't have an ego. Work with people that do, and give them ideas, and then step back. Help them execute the ideas. They're going to continue to come back for more. So, I mean, and I think we've been able to accomplish some things. I also stepped on a lot of toes. I mean, that library project, we had a brilliant idea in the community win with the director of our public library. It's like, City Hall needed a new City Hall. We're like, well, let's sell the existing library to City Hall, and they can spend $300,000 on renovating it to serve what they need for police department and so forth, and they would be across Highway 1 in our downtown. And let's take the old Burnett drugstore, which is across from the splash park, and create a new library. Boy, we thought that was just brilliant. That went over not well. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I mean, it went to state legislature to try to shut us down, and that opened my eyes. I said, we have a bigger problem. It really was concerning to me. The reason nobody would come out and say, they all blamed it on the flooding in downtown, right? But it was how close it was to the railroad track. Nobody would come out and say it, and the reason they wouldn't is because of that. So it was hurtful to see that we still have communities that are thinking that way, but we do, and it's out there. So there's another shift. How do I navigate this? That one we didn't pull off. City of Wind probably spent an extra $1.2 million that they didn't have to. And they tore down the old City Hall and built it right back where it was. Made no community impact, did it? For the better, when you spend $1.2 million, you should make impact, right? That's all I'll say about that. Okay, we got about 10, I'm gonna try to wrap this up in 10 minutes, keep us on schedule, and continue to ask questions as well. And hopefully this all comes together and you see what the bigger picture is. It's all part of it. So Duval's Bluff, and the bigger piece of it, back to the big woods, and we all know of Lone Oak and Carlisle and Hazen and Duval's Bluff, and each one of them have their 1 mile segment of trail right through the town, because that was the Rock Island Railroad that was sold, and unfortunately, even the railroad easement was sold. So it's all parceled up all the way across there. Well, we scoured the whole thing. It's all still intact. It's in the woods. 80% of it's accessible, no structures on it. All of the crossings on the waterways, they're still there. Not the physical, but the expensive parts, the concrete abutments. They're all still there. The Cache River, the White River, Bayou de View. This goes all the way to Brinkley. And then at Brinkley, it's still a rail. But, essentially, this was the Butterfield Trail. It follows that same line from Memphis to Brinkley and over. So, one of our project missions is to reacquire access and easements, ownership if we need to, and turn that corridor, which is 50 miles from Junction Bridge and Little Rock to Duval's Bluff, another 30 miles to Brinkley, 80 miles total, into just like the Delta Heritage Trail, crushed stone top. You know, and the beauty about these type of trails, and then deed back the right-of-ways, maybe preserve them, deed them back to Department of Heritage as to add on to the prairie, Grand Prairie, or woodland ecologies, so that you essentially be riding a bike through, you know, native Arkansas ecosystems to the big woods. And then at the big woods, you've got, you know, a 1927 historic register hotel called the Castleberry Hotel. If you've ever been to Clarksdale and stayed at the Travelers that Chuck Rutledge has developed, it's what our envisioning is for that space to land people. The city owns it. They would be willing to sell it to our organization if we came up with the funds to do it. It's in dire need. I mean, it's one of those where the water is starting to get into it, and we need to get on it quickly. But before that, the existing Rock Island Railroad bed remains. These I've got a gajillion pictures all the way through, but this is what we have. It's all there. You can even look on an aerial and catch it. This is the structure going across. I mean, that would cost $1.5 million, if not more than that. That's over the Cache River. These are just little, in the middle of the woods, going over little waterways. They're all there. There's no telling how many are there. I mean, and they all would classify as historic. I mean, the ones that are intact like this would be historic structures, which would be fascinating to uncover and bring about. And then we all know this one. This is right when you're going over the White River. You saw where the Delta Heritage Trail is. They're putting $40 million in. They're preserving 2 of these among more linear miles of trail. But I mean, who wouldn't want to come and experience that if you could? So that's the bigger picture of Duval's Bluff. That railroad goes all the way to Brinkley. I had my son follow me to Brinkley. He took me to the Delta Heritage Trail State Park. I got on my bike and I rode all gravel, a little bit of asphalt, farm roads from Delta Heritage Trail back to my car in Brinkley. I think it was 50 miles. Went through Marble, Turkey Scratch, Louisiana Purchase State Park. All were connected. I probably had like 6 combines, 12 farm trucks. You know, that's all I had. You don't have, and they're going, it's just beautiful. It's stress-free. I may not ever get on a bike on the highway again after some of the experiences I've had. And I'm telling you, I said it earlier, the gravel bike riding industry is exploding, and I see why. In Arkansas, we're sitting here just we have all the infrastructure. We don't need $40 million. I'm going to show you a trail system that we're looking to put together. It's not going to take $40 million to put together. It might take $1 million. And then all we need to do is market and bring people in. You heard me say it earlier, there's 1 million people crossing the Mississippi River a year. If we got 20,000 of them, you know, and they come over and spend time in our area, Arkansas isn't benefiting from any of those people crossing the river. I mean, West Memphis is even, has the best opportunity, West Memphis and Memphis, to tap into that. But they have trackers on their bikes. You see exactly where they're going. They're going over and they're running the same routes and going back across. But it's a fascinating number. So you've heard it, a million times, but our mission is identifying and preserving the historic structures, right? And then design the trail networks, connectivity. And we're talking about fly-in to small municipal airports, to bike, to water trails. And then, protection or putting people into leave no trace into unique environments and public lands. We have partnerships with Nature Conservancy with Scott Simon's been great. He wants us to develop like a leave no trace, like adventure tourism, and to even develop some of those places you're seeing in there. They have some of the most beautiful lands between Arkansas State Parks and Nature Conservancy. I mean, Arkansas is a beautiful, beautiful place. And then the food security, the unique cuisine and farming communities are very important. These numbers down here, this is more like going back to the 5 port cities and the 5 market towns. So initially creating 5 jobs in each one of those that spins off and creates 25 jobs with potential economic impact of 20 million. These are just really, really early looks at that. Catalyst project for us is Duval's Bluff. I told you, let's see if you, so that's Castleberry Hotel there. And then this is the elevation. And Glen Carroll, the city was going to tear these buildings down, and we were able to get them quick claim deeded over to us, and we've got masons working. They're in bad shape. I mean, they're if y'all came and saw them, it's like, well, I'm not real sure that they're not beyond, but the brick, the walls were actually in really good shape. So we're masonry. We've got what roof hasn't fallen. Where the next thing is we're going to be going and taking it out and putting the roof structure back on. So that's our initial phase, is just get that, which is what we heard all morning, get it stabilized and secured is our goal. But we're working with Arkansas Economic Development potential, so creating broadband internet to these and making them workforce aspect. The building I'm talking about is this Robinson building here. There's 2 of them, and then we own this 3rd one there, and then you got the green one is the Grasshopper Bar. It's the Irish fella named Murphy in 1900s came over and put a bar in there. It's been a bar ever since. I mean, if you're from Ireland, that's what you do, right? I mean, and it's pretty cool. We tried to get it, but the owner of it thinks that we're gonna turn this place into something. So, well, good for him. So, and here's the Castleberry Hotel. There's so much history in Duval's Bluff, but it's all there's some other wonderful structures around. We're looking we're taking $500,000 and just trying to stabilize the structure right now, and then do a fundraising to move into the activation and implementation of our program. I'm not going to get into that too much, but there's the elevations and some of the different things. Workforce Training Center, coding school. You can do these things from anywhere now. They're remote, and that's why I have such I believe in the Arkansas Delta and where we are, because for one, I mean, look at the population basis of Memphis. Memphis has really elevated itself, and a lot of that's because Nashville is overspilling, and young people are looking for a place that's a little bit more glitty and not so glitzy. And you're seeing that in Memphis. And now in Memphis we have Memphis. I mean, they just nobody knows how to navigate except you're on I-40 and getting through here as quickly as you can. So we want to create, show people how to navigate the place. I'm going to quickly go through this because I'm 2 minutes now. But this one's dear to my heart, because this is the one I've ridden all these roads. I've found them. I've got them on Strava. They don't all look like that, but we do have some mountain bike trails too when we get to Village Creek. These are all gravel road, probably 85 to 90% gravel roads up on Crowley's Ridge. The beauty of it is it ties Crowley's Ridge State Park, Lake Firestone, Lake Poinsett, Village Creek, Mississippi River, and even Parkin. We've got a little spur off to Parkin. So we have all this existing infrastructure in place as far as like camping and so forth. We're only 50 miles from Memphis, Village Creek.
Entire bicycling trail accessible at this time.
Existing infrastructure, 200 miles.
You're kidding.
Every 18 to 20 miles, you're in one of these little villages, and I've got it mapped to where you show up. Jamie's here, it's like I don't see Highway 1 when I come into Harrisburg. I see that beautiful Methodist church in the downtown and the courthouse. And it's like, that's a different experience. And I'm going to show you some pictures. We had 6 people fly into Jonesboro. We pulled bikes off of the plane. And I had 4 others. We had 10 of us, and this was 2 weeks ago. We did a 200-mile ride. Because I don't sell anything unless I know it's got some value. So I've spent a lot of hours on the bike riding these and finding places I've never seen before.
As an aside, my son spent 6 weeks in his Sprinter with his bicycle, traveling national parks and BLM out west. Inevitably, if he didn't get there at the right time, he could not find a place to park for the people that were doing the same thing as he was doing.
So the key here is, and we're tying this to the Delta Heritage Trail, but I think that we're onto something greater than the Delta Heritage Trail. For one, it's not that the expense is not going to be there. I think this is going to make the Delta Heritage Trail that much more, because this is 200 miles of existing infrastructure. All we need is signage. All we need is marketing, branding, promotions. We even have all these state parks with campgrounds. It's not like we have to build any of this.
Well, as an aside to that, he spent an average of $100 a day. And for a little town like Cotton Plant,
Yes.
$100 new money is huge.
Well, my group of 10 moving through these towns, I guarantee you, every time we went through, they remembered us. And we were we had lunch catered at Delta Dirt. Our ticket leaving there after buying all the vodka was over $1,000. 10 people. That's a big impact, and that's just 10 people. The critical thing is our small towns, which are so interesting to be into, they don't have the infrastructure to support it right now. But our state parks do. We have to get the small towns. If we start having people cycling through, that issue will take care of itself. People will be looking for these buildings, putting in bunk rooms, in a small apartments and things like that, and providing the amenities for them to be there. So cyclists are pretty easy, but they love the destination, and they love when they get off the bike to have something that they enjoy to do, which is eat, drink beer, and listen to music. That's why we ended up in Clarksdale. And not that we didn't eat and drink beer everywhere else, but we did have Greg Spradlin with us, and he'd pull the guitar out every once in a while. So, but here it's beyond that. So cycling tourism, and we could also do this. What is the Iowa ride? It's got over 100,000 people, doesn't it? And it rides that, I can't remember the name of it, but from state line to state line. We can have a ride, and it impacts all of these little towns coming through there. And it could generate an incredible amount of revenue. So that's a 200-mile bike ride. And don't forget, I'm not adding the Delta Heritage Trail and what's happening there. You can go all the way down to Louisiana. Yes.
Have you made any plans to go on up with the Crowley Ridge goes in well enough to Cape Girardeau, Missouri?
It's a good, I said it earlier, I don't like boundaries, and I've looked at that. I would love for it to go all the way to the headwaters of St. Francis River. When you get up,
I was in Cape Girardeau for several years, and
you could, and
I've been on that trail in that area.
Well, and that's why I don't know that area well enough, and I still need to map north of Jonesboro, some of that. But getting to a lot of people don't realize, but the headwaters of St. Francis, there's some of the best kayaking and boating there is.
It is. And the Crowley Ridge actually goes from Mississippi River at Cape Girardeau to the Mississippi River at Helena.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we call this, like ridge to river. Because you start on St. Francis River. One of the most powerful places in all of Arkansas to me is the confluence where the St. Francis meets the Mississippi River. It's unbelievable. Go and stand there and experience that. And so, but it's this contrast of this, and Crowley's Ridge is so much better than riding levees because you don't see 10 miles ahead of you. You see, you know, like a half a mile, if that. And you're twisting, turning, and elevation. We had 6,000 feet of elevation on that ride.
And another place that would be very easy to look into is that trail that goes from Kansas City to St.
Oh, all the way up to the Katy Trail.
Yeah.
Well, that would be really interesting.
You could hook right on
Yeah.
into that, and it'd be fantastic. Every person could leave
It-
Kansas City and go all the way to Helena,
Well-
Arkansas.
Well, I've gone over my time, so I'm gonna fly through this. But I mentioned this earlier, the food security. That's also an asset that's already in place, and it's just a matter of bringing small farms and tourism that way. This is the one that probably, and this I'll give Jamie credit for this. I didn't steal it from you. I'm just selling it. This, you know, we all know how hard it is to deal with the rail, but this is Union Pacific. We did some studies on this, and I hear the trains because I live close enough to it. From when they've even pulled up the north-south segment running downtown because it's not used. From when to Helena, and this rail goes right up into right up where all the old cotton gin, just south of Helena, and it gets you right to downtown. That rail is basically deemed unusable for freight. It's not used. It's still there. It's still there. There's not a train on it. So that's available. This one is their lowest rating. There's no more than 3 trains that go on that. Jamie's from Harrisburg. And they're weird times of the day. So, you know, there is what do we call it? The doodle bug. You know, so it's got an engine on both sides. This is a historic train from Memphis. It actually ran it ran the route, I think, from Memphis to Shreveport along where the Delta Heritage Trail was pulled up. So putting a train like that, you know, at both, and moving, and here's the trick of it is, these are, I don't have that count, go ahead, do it right there, the LMI of these counties. You're getting, what do you have in Jonesboro and Helena? You've got healthcare centers. You're getting people access to healthcare. You're getting people access to workforce. So there's no reason to say that, well, I can't drive that far, or I can't, you know, so we could sell that. But then it also, my side of it, it's like the tourism. If you're in Jonesboro, or, you know, throw your bike on this thing and go down and ride up, or vice versa. There's so much. I think that's got so much cool potential there is. So this was the fly. I'm just flip through these quickly. This was our trip 2 weeks ago. This was the Fly Oz plane. That thing can land anywhere. It can land on a grass landing strip. This Fly Oz is a Tom & Stewart's flying club out of Bentonville. They bought that plane to do exactly what it just did. It's the first time it did it. They loaded up 6 people, loaded up 6 bikes. They flew in, they dropped them off in Jonesboro, came back and picked them up in Clarksdale 5 days later. These are the type of roads, that's pavement over there, but this is what you're doing. This is what 60-70% of it are these type of roads.
That's Crowley Ridge State Park, isn't it, over there?
These are
Village Creek.
well, it's down close to Village Creek, but look at, does anybody know where that is? South of Forrest City.
I think Village Creek.
Well, it's not, that's a county road, south of Forrest City, between Marietta and Forrest City, and I'm telling you, those are like nearly 20 feet tall, cut. But it looks, I know Village Creek has some areas that looks just like that. You find it all over. I mean, that's like the Narrows of Crowley's Ridge. You'd have people coming just to experience that, if they see it. Delta Dirt, Williams family, if you're in Helena, support them, just a wonderful family, doing sweet potato vodka.
That's a federal and state tax credit project.
Awesome. Well, good. And they're incredible people. I mean,
Yeah, they really are.
and they supported us so much. You know, the worst part of it was getting out of Jonesboro, you know, and we stayed out had to stay out on the flatlands until you can see the ridge over there. That was taking a downtown wind in the park. And of course, we got to Jones's. The folks that came from Northwest Arkansas were absolutely blown away. They had no idea that we had something like this. And what got them the most was the cultural experience. And it's like, let me tell you something, there's one thing that you cannot recreate or replicate, and that's the culture of this place. And that is probably the greatest asset we have that we need to protect. Not only these historic structures, we need to protect the culture of this place and keep it intact. I mean, and we ended up in Clarksdale, because Clarksdale has the accommodations. You know, we've got to get a hotel in Helena, similar to the Travelers. We've got to get more music. We've got to get music across the river, and all these little towns I talked about, they need to be rotating through them from Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. So that's it. I just came across this because it's kind of interesting for this one. That life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. And we're moving. This thing is moving, and it's moving quickly. And as you can see, that we've got looking to accomplish a lot in 4 years, but we're not building a lot. A lot of the building is the infrastructure aspects of the towns. It's like, I tell people, it's like finding Machu Picchu in your backyard and just activating it. I really think that we're on something. So I went 10 minutes over, and that was sorry for such a long presentation, but it's a lot of info. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks.
That was awesome.
I want to add one thing to that. We talked about the